I always thought betrayal would feel like a sudden punch to the gut, quick, shocking, and over in an instant. But real betrayal? It's more like poison, seeping through your veins slowly as the truth reveals itself, one excruciating drop at a time. The morning started like any other Tuesday. I woke up to sunlight filtering through our bedroom curtains, my husband Daniel already gone for work. His side of the bed was cold. He must have left early for that meeting he'd mentioned. I stretched, enjoying a rare moment of peace before the day demanded my attention. If only I'd known what was waiting for me in his office drawer. I wasn't snooping, not really. I just needed our property tax statement for the appointment with our financial advisor later that day. Daniel had mentioned filing it in his desk, and since he wasn't answering his phone, I decided to look for it myself. The statement wasn't in the main drawer where I expected it to be, so I checked the locked one below it. We'd always shared the key code to his desk locks, at least, I thought we had. The combination I tried didn't work. Strange. I tried my birthday, our anniversary, nothing. Then, on a hunch, I tried his mother's birthday. The drawer clicked open. That should have been my first warning. Inside, I found a small leather-bound ledger I'd never seen before. Flipping it open, I saw columns of numbers, dates, and notations in Daniel's precise handwriting. At first, I thought it was just some work accounting he'd brought home, until I saw my name at the top of several pages. Emma's allowance, one header read. Allowance? I was 34 years old with a marketing director position that, until my recent layoff 3 months ago, had brought in nearly as much as Daniel's architect salary. I'd never had an allowance in my life. As I flipped through the pages, my confusion turned to a cold, hard knot in my stomach. There were detailed records of money being transferred from our joint account to a separate account I knew nothing about. Notes in the margins read things like, moved $1,200 before each check's balance, and another $500 diverted. Parents suggest increasing to $700 per month. Parents. My in-laws. The same people who had insisted on hosting us for dinner every Sunday, who had given us that generous down payment for our house as a gift, who had always made those little comments about my shopping habits or my expensive taste. My hands shook as I continued reading. The last entry was from yesterday. He's starting to ask about budget, stick to story about market downturn affecting our investments. The lie he'd told me just last week when I'd asked why our savings seemed lower than I expected. I sat back in Daniel's office chair, the leather ledger cool against my suddenly clammy hands. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, ongoing deception orchestrated by my husband and initiated by my own in-laws. They'd been hiding money from me, creating a secret fund I had no access to, no knowledge of. And for what? To control how much I spent? To keep me dependent now that I was between jobs? My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Hope you're having a good morning. Financial advisor called. He needs to reschedule. Don't worry about finding those documents. Of course he did. I took photos of every page in the ledger, carefully returned it to its exact position, and locked the drawer. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to the bank. I'd like to check the balance on all accounts under the names Emma and Daniel Porter, I told the teller, sliding over my ID and debit card. The teller's expression was professional, but her eyes reflected something concern, as she pulled up our information. You have access to the joint checking account ending in 4839 and the joint savings account ending in 6712, she said. Would you like the balances on those? Are there any other accounts under our names? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She hesitated, glancing at her screen. There are other accounts under Mr. Porter's name, but you're not listed as a joint owner on those. I can't provide information on accounts you don't have access to. Accounts. Plural. Thank you, I said, gathering my ID and card. That tells me everything I need to know. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, trying to process the betrayal spreading through me like poison. I'd trusted Daniel completely. We'd been married for 6 years, together for 9. We'd talked about having children soon. We shared everything, or so I thought. I called my best friend, Nora. I need you to be honest with me, I said when she answered. Has Daniel ever said anything to you about my spending habits? About me being irresponsible with money? What? No, she said, confusion clear in her voice. Then, after a pause, well, he did mention once that his parents thought you might be overspending on the house renovations, but he was defending you. Said it was your money too, and you both had agreed on the budget. Why? What's going on? So he'd been discussing our finances, my spending specifically, with friends too. How many people knew about this? How many had been giving him advice on how to manage his supposedly financially irresponsible wife? Can I come over? I asked. I need to show you something. At Nora's apartment, I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos of the ledger. Her expression darkened as she scrolled through them. Emma, this is messed up, she finally said. How long has this been going on? Based on these dates? Almost 2 years. My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. That's over $20,000 he's hidden from me. You need to confront him, Nora said, gripping my hand. This isn't just about money. This is a breach of trust. I know, I said, but I need to understand everything first. That's when I remembered the financial advisor, the one who had mysteriously needed to reschedule as soon as I was looking for documents. I wondered if he was in on it too. I'll drive you, Nora offered when I told her I wanted to visit the advisor's office unannounced. Martin Graves had been our financial advisor since we got married. He'd been recommended by Daniel's parents, which now struck me as significant in a way it hadn't before. Mrs. Porter, he said, surprise evident when his assistant showed me into his office. I thought we had rescheduled for next week. We did, I said, taking a seat without being invited. But I had some urgent questions that couldn't wait. Martin glanced at his computer, then back at me. I'm afraid I don't have your full portfolio prepared. That's fine, I interrupted. I just need to know about the accounts my husband has that I'm not named on. The blood drained from Martin's face. He adjusted his tie, buying time. Mrs. Porter, client confidentiality. Let me stop you right there, I said, placing my phone on his desk with one of the ledger photos displayed. I already know about the secret accounts. I know my in-laws are involved. What I don't know is whether you've been actively helping my husband hide marital assets from me, which I'm pretty sure violates some financial regulations. It was a bluff. I wasn't sure if it actually broke any rules, but Martin's reaction told me I'd hit a nerve. I've simply been following my client's instructions, he said, his voice tight. Both your clients, I corrected. We hired you together, as a couple. Martin removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. Mrs. Porter, Emma, this is an uncomfortable situation. Perhaps you should discuss this with your husband. Oh, I plan to. But first, I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. How many accounts are there? How much money has been diverted? And what role did Daniel's parents play in this? Martin hesitated, then sighed. I really shouldn't. Either you tell me, or I walk out of here and call a lawyer and the regulatory board for financial advisors. Your choice. That did it. Martin pulled up files on his computer and began talking. Yes, there were separate accounts in Daniel's name only. Yes, regular transfers had been made from our joint accounts to these private ones. And yes, Richard and Diane Porter, my in-laws, had not only suggested the arrangement, but added their own funds to one of the accounts under the condition that I would have no access or knowledge of it. It was presented to me as a precautionary measure, Martin explained, not meeting my eyes. Given your recent job loss and the economic climate. Don't, I cut him off. Don't try to justify this. When did it start? Before I lost my job. Martin nodded reluctantly. About 2 years ago, when we were both employed. When I was contributing equally to our household. When there was absolutely no financial reason to protect money from me. Print out all the statements, I said. Every account, every transaction for the past 2 years. Mrs. Porter, I don't think. Print them, I repeated. Now, I left Martin's office with a folder full of damning evidence and a cold, clear purpose. Nora was waiting in the car. What now? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat, clutching the folder. Now I go home and wait for my husband. The hours until Daniel returned from work were the longest of my life. I sat at our kitchen island, documents spread before me, rehearsing what I would say, how I would remain calm, how I wouldn't let him twist this into being my fault. When I heard his key in the lock at 6:32 p.m., my heart hammered against my ribs. "Em? I'm home," Daniel called, his voice so normal, so unchanged. As if this were any other day. As if he hadn't been betraying me for years. In the kitchen, I called back, my own voice surprisingly steady. He came in, loosening his tie, that familiar smile on his face, the face I'd trusted, the man I'd built a life with. He leaned in to kiss me, then froze when he saw the papers on the counter. "What's all this?" he asked, but the flicker in his eyes told me he already knew. "Why don't you tell me?" I said, sliding the leather ledger toward him, the original, which I'd retrieved from his office before he got home. The color drained from his face. "Emma, I can explain." "Please do," I said, folding my hands on the counter. "Explain why you've been hiding money from me for 2 years. Explain why my in-laws are involved in our finances. Explain why our financial advisor knows more about our money than I do." "It's not what you think," he started, running a hand through his hair, his tell when he was anxious. "Really? Because I think you've been systematically diverting funds from our joint accounts into private accounts I have no access to. I think you've been lying to me about our financial situation. I think you and your parents have been treating me like an irresponsible child who can't be trusted with her own money." "My parents were just trying to help," Daniel said, his defensive tone igniting my anger further. "They saw how much you were spending on." "On what, Daniel? On the house renovations we agreed on together? On the vacation we both planned? When have I ever made a major purchase without discussing it with you first?" He couldn't answer that, because it had never happened. "This isn't about your spending specifically," he tried again. "It's about having a safety net." "A safety net you decided I didn't deserve to know about? A safety net your parents control?" Daniel paced the kitchen. "You're making this into something malicious when it wasn't meant to be. My parents suggested it as a way to strengthen our financial future, especially if we have kids." "Don't bring our potential children into this," I snapped. "This started 2 years ago when both of us were employed and financially stable. This isn't about protection, it's about control." "That's not fair," Daniel protested. "Not fair?" I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. "You know what's not fair? Finding out my husband and his parents have been conspiring behind my back. Finding out that every time your mother made a little comment about my shopping, she knew you were squirreling away money where I couldn't waste it." "My mother respects you," Daniel said, but there was a hollowness to his words. "Your mother sees me as a threat to the Porter family money," I countered. "And apparently, so do you." Daniel sat heavily on one of the kitchen stools. "I should have told you," he admitted finally. It started small. Dad suggested setting aside some money without telling you, just as a surprise fund for later. But then it became this ongoing thing, and the longer it went on, the harder it was to come clean about it." "A surprise fund?" I repeated incredulously. "That's the excuse you're going with? So what was the plan? In 20 years you'd present me with a check and say, 'Surprise. Here's all the money I've been hiding from you for decades.'" He winced. "When you put it that way." "There is no other way to put it, Daniel. You lied to me. You manipulated our joint finances behind my back. You involved your parents in our marriage in a way that undermines me completely." I took a deep breath. "And I need to know right now, was the financial advisor's sudden cancellation today you're doing? Did you call him when you realized I might find your little ledger?" His silence was answer enough. "Jesus, Daniel." I pushed away from the counter, needing distance. "How am I ever supposed to trust you again?" "Emma, please." He stood, reaching for me, but I backed away. "We can fix this. I'll add you to the accounts. I'll tell my parents to back off. We can start fresh." "It's not that simple," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. "This isn't just about the money. It's about respect. It's about trust. It's about you seeing me as your partner, not someone to be managed." "I do see you as my partner," he insisted. "I made a mistake. A big one. But our marriage is worth more than this mistake, isn't it?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. I glanced at it. Richard Porter, my father-in-law. Of course. Daniel must have texted his parents the moment he saw the ledger. I answered and put it on speakerphone. "Emma, dear." Richard's voice filled the kitchen. That familiar patronizing tone I'd always tried to ignore now unbearable. Daniel just told us about your discovery. I want to assure you this was done with the best intentions. Save it, Richard, I cut in. I've seen the ledger. I've seen the bank statements. I know exactly how much money you've helped your son hide from me, and I know about the conditions you set that I would never have access to or knowledge of these funds. Now, Emma, his tone sharpened, there's no need to be dramatic. Financial planning is complex, and sometimes the less financially experienced spouse. I have an MBA from Northwestern, I reminded him coldly. I managed a 7-figure marketing budget for 6 years. I was making almost as much as your son until my company downsized. Do not talk to me about financial experience. Different people have different priorities, Richard continued, undeterred. Diane and I simply wanted to ensure that you could continue controlling your son and, by extension, me. I finished for him. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded in damaging our marriage beyond repair. Now that's just hysterical talk, Richard said dismissively. Daniel, talk some sense into your wife. I looked at Daniel, waiting to see what he would do, which parent he would choose, his father or his wife. Daniel stared at the phone, then at me, conflict written all over his face. Dad, he finally said, I need to handle this with Emma. I'll call you later. Daniel, don't let emotions. Goodbye, Dad. Daniel ended the call. It was something, a tiny step in the right direction, but nowhere near enough. They're coming over, I said. Not a question. Daniel nodded. Mom texted. They're worried. They're worried I'll take half of everything, including their precious secret funds. I corrected him. And they should be. His head snapped up. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know if I can move past this, Daniel. I'm saying that right now. I need space to think, and I need you to leave. Leave? This is my house too. The house that's in both our names, paid for with both our money, despite what your family seems to think, I reminded him. I'm not asking forever. I'm asking for tonight. The doorbell rang before he could respond. Daniel's parents hadn't even waited for permission to come over. Of course they hadn't. Permission wasn't something the Porters ever seemed to think they needed. Don't answer it, I said. Emma, they're my parents. And I'm your wife, I countered. At least, I thought I was your partner. But partners don't do what you've done. The doorbell rang again, more insistently. Then came the knocking. Daniel? Emma? Diane Porter's voice called through the door. We need to talk about this as a family. Family. The word twisted like a knife. In their eyes, I had never truly been family, just an interloper who might squander the Porter fortune, such as it was. If you open that door, I said quietly, I'm walking out of it. Daniel looked torn, frozen between the door and me. The knocking continued. Son, open up, Richard's voice now. This is ridiculous. I watched my husband's face, saw the moment he made his choice. He moved toward the door. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and the folder of financial documents. As Daniel opened the door to his parents, I slipped past them all. Emma. Diane reached for my arm, but I shook her off. Don't touch me, I said, my voice ice. Don't call me. Don't come to my workplace when I start my new job next week. Richard stepped forward. You're being irrational. No, I'm finally seeing clearly, I replied. Daniel can explain everything to you. I'm sure you'll all have a lovely discussion about how to manage the fallout from this. Just like you've been managing me all these years. I walked to my car, ignoring their calls behind me. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw Daniel standing on the doorstep, watching me go, his parents flanking him like sentries. I drove to Nora's, the only place I could think to go. She took one look at my face when she opened the door and pulled me into a hug. He chose them, I said, my voice breaking. He always has. Inside her apartment, I sank onto her couch, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming me. The day had started with a simple search for a tax document and was ending with the unraveling of my entire marriage. What are you going to do? Nora asked, bringing me tea I hadn't asked for but desperately needed. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I know I can't go back to that house tonight. Maybe ever. My phone buzzed with texts and calls, Daniel, his parents, even his sister Charlotte. I silenced it and placed it face down on Nora's coffee table. You can stay here as long as you need, Nora assured me. And if you want my opinion, you should talk to a lawyer before you talk to Daniel again. I nodded, too drained to argue, though the thought of lawyers and divorce made everything painfully real. The thing I can't get past, I said after a long silence, is that this wasn't just about money. This was about them never seeing me as an equal, as family. And Daniel allowed it, encouraged it, even. Men and their mothers, Nora muttered, then caught herself. Sorry, not helpful. Despite everything, I almost smiled. No, you're right. But it's more than that. The Porters have always been about control. Richard controls the family finances, Diane controls the family social calendar, and together they control their children. I just never thought Daniel would let them control our marriage too. My phone buzzed again, skittering across the coffee table. Nora glanced at it. Daniel again, she reported. That's his 10th text. What's he saying? She hesitated, then handed me the phone. Maybe you should see for yourself. I read through the messages, each one more desperate than the last. Emma, please come home. We need to talk. I'm sorry. I know I messed up. My parents are gone. I asked them to leave. Please just let me know you're safe. I've transferred everything back to our joint accounts. I told my parents they need to respect boundaries if they want to be part of our lives. I've been an idiot. I see that now. I'm sleeping in the guest room. The bedroom is yours when you're ready to come home. I love you. Please don't let my mistake end us. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. The last one had come in just seconds ago. I've called a marriage counselor. I've made an appointment for tomorrow if you're willing. I'll go alone if you're not ready. I set the phone down, conflicting emotions warring within me. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to think that today's revelation had been the wake-up call he needed. Another part remembered the meticulous ledger, the 2 years of deception, the ease with which he'd lied to my face about our finances. What are you thinking? Nora asked softly. I'm thinking that I don't know who my husband really is, I admitted. And I'm not sure I ever did. People make mistakes, she said carefully. Even huge, trust-destroying ones. I know. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug of tea. But this wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was years of deliberate deception. And his parents are terrible, Nora finished for me. No argument there. But Daniel is at least trying to make amends now. After being caught, I pointed out. Who knows how long it would have continued otherwise? My phone buzzed with another text. Daniel again. I've told my parents we need space. They won't be coming to Sunday dinner anymore. That boundary should have been set long ago. I stared at the message, remembering all the Sunday dinners I'd endured, the subtle digs about my career choices, my clothes, my background. How many times had I asked Daniel to stand up to them? How many times had he dismissed my concerns, telling me I was being too sensitive? And now, after I'd discovered their financial manipulation, he was finally willing to set boundaries? Too little, too late, I murmured. Maybe Nora agreed. Or maybe this was the push he needed to finally grow up and be a husband first, son second. I looked at my oldest friend, surprised by her defense of Daniel. You think I should forgive him? I think that's up to you, she said carefully. But I also think people can change when they're forced to confront their mistakes. The question is whether you can ever trust him again. Trust. The foundation of any relationship, especially a marriage. Daniel and his parents had taken a sledgehammer to that foundation. I don't know, I admitted. Right now, I can't imagine ever trusting him again. You don't have to decide tonight, Nora reminded me. Get some sleep. Everything looks different in the morning. But as I lay on Nora's pull-out couch that night, sleep eluded me. I kept seeing the ledger entries, hearing Richard's condescending voice, feeling the weight of years of subtle undermining from the Porter family. And underneath it all was the crushing realization that Daniel, my partner, my person, had participated in it all. My phone lit up with a final text just after midnight. I love you, Emma. I'll fight for us, however long it takes. Whatever you decide, I need you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I turned the phone face down without responding and finally drifted into a fitful sleep. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through Nora's living room blinds. I checked my phone, 3 missed calls from Daniel, but no new texts. He was giving me space, at least. Coffee? Nora offered, emerging from her bedroom in pajamas. Please, I said, my voice rough from unshed tears and lack of sleep. As she busied herself in the kitchen, I scrolled through my emails, trying to find some normalcy in the chaos my life had become. There, nestled between promotional emails and newsletters, was a message that made my breath catch. Subject, offer letter, marketing director position. From Westridge Media Group. The job I'd interviewed for last week, a position even better than the one I'd lost in the downsizing. I'd been so caught up in yesterday's discovery that I'd forgotten they were supposed to let me know this week. With trembling fingers, I opened the email. They were offering me the job, with a salary higher than what I'd been making before. I'd be leading a team of 12, with a substantial marketing budget and creative control over campaigns. Financial independence. A fresh start if I wanted it. I hadn't realized I was crying until Nora set down the coffee and put an arm around my shoulders. Bad news, she asked. Good news, actually, I said, showing her the email. Perfect timing. This is amazing, she said, scanning the details. Are you going to take it? Yes, I said without hesitation. Regardless of what happens with Daniel, I need this. I need to know I can stand on my own. As if summoned by my decision, my phone rang. Daniel. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Emma, he breathed, relief evident in his voice. Thank you for picking up. How are you? Where did you stay? I'm at Nora's, I said. And I'm processing. I understand, he said quickly. Take all the time you need. I just wanted to let you know I meant what I said in my texts. I've transferred all the money back to our joint accounts. I've told my parents they need to respect boundaries. And I've made an appointment with a marriage counselor for this afternoon, if you're willing to come. I closed my eyes, trying to sort through my jumbled feelings. I got a job offer, I said instead of answering his question. Marketing director at Westridge Media Group. Emma, that's wonderful, he said, genuine warmth in his voice. The job you really wanted. Yes. Are you? Are you going to take it? I am, I confirmed. I need this, Daniel. I need to know I can support myself, make my own financial decisions, be independent. Of course, he said quickly. I support that completely. A bead of silence stretched between us. About counseling, I finally said. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I understand, he said, though disappointment tinged his voice. I'll still go. I need to work on myself regardless of what you decide about us. That surprised me. The Daniel I thought I knew would have pushed harder, tried to convince me to come home right away, made promises he might or might not keep. I need more time, I said. This isn't something I can just get over. I know, he acknowledged. What you found, what I did, it was a betrayal of everything our marriage should be. I see that now. I just hope someday you can forgive me. I don't know if I can, I admitted, but I'm willing to try counseling. Not today, but soon. Hope crept into his voice. Really? Yes, I said. But Daniel, there are conditions. Anything, he said quickly. Your parents can't be involved in our finances ever again. Not one penny, not one piece of advice. Done, he agreed immediately. And I want a post-nuptial agreement drawn up, protecting both of us. He hesitated only briefly. Okay. And I want us to see a financial advisor of my choosing, not Martin Graves. Absolutely, he said. Emma, I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but if you're willing to give me one, I promise I won't waste it. I thought about the ledger, the secret accounts, the conspiracy between my husband and his parents. I thought about 6 years of marriage and the love that had once seemed unshakable. I thought about the new job offer and the independence it represented. I need to accept this job offer first, I said. Then I'll call the counselor and set up an appointment for next week. Until then, I'm staying at Nora's. Okay, he agreed. No argument. And Emma? Congratulations on the job. You deserve it. You've always been the capable one, the smart one. I should have respected that instead of letting my parents convince me otherwise. After we hung up, I sat on Nora's couch, staring at my phone. Well, she prompted. I'm going to try counseling, I said slowly. Not because I'm ready to forgive him, but because I need to understand how we got here. And because 6 years of marriage deserves at least that much effort. And if counseling doesn't help, then I'll know I tried, I said, a strange calm settling over me. But either way, I'm accepting this job offer. I'm renegotiating the terms of our marriage. And I'm never, ever letting anyone control my finances again. Nora raised her coffee mug in a toast. To taking back your power. I clinked my mug against hers. And to never settling for less than I deserve. The future stretched before me, uncertain, but somehow clearer than it had been 24 hours ago. My marriage might or might not survive this betrayal, but I would. That much I knew for sure. I opened my laptop and began composing my acceptance email to Westridge Media Group. As I typed, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, perhaps even years, as Mrs. Daniel Porter, truly, completely, and unquestionably in control of my own life.